This is Sundays at 6. We don't often do one of these, and the reason why is we save these for interviews, special occasions like breaking news and stuff. And I have the second time back. And you could go to AskSomeSay to ask questions. The second time back, I have with us very generous Matt McNeil to be with us. Matt, welcome to Some Say with Tom and Nickie.
My pleasure to be here.
I really appreciate you coming back because we loved having you the first time. It was really great. And
I do want to apologize. I mean, this last week, being here in Minneapolis, we have a big event here called the Blue State Ball, where we have usually a lot of great politicians and a lot of our national talent comes on in. And we've done this. This is the 11th year we've done it. And it just this last 2 weeks, you wanted me to have me on last week. There was just no way on the 22nd I was going to be able to be here, and just getting all the stuff ready to go for the Blue State Ball. I'm sorry. I'm sorry it was a little slack getting back in touch with you, but it's an absolute pleasure to be back with you again on the show. Thank you very much for inviting me.
no, I really appreciate it. And that's why I was like in the email, Matt, if you're gonna be tied up by a conservative who got in or drunk or hangover eat, it's okay. Because I'm jealous of your Blue State Ball. In fact, I'm really jealous. So,
Well, and it wasn't. I mean, the peyote was fun, but no, the what I had. Okay, so what happens is, we have this thing. It's in Minneapolis. We of course we do it with the radio station, and if folks can hear me Monday through Fridays in the mornings, 6 to 8 a.m. on AM 950 KTNF in Minneapolis, St. Paul. And if you like, you're more than welcome to follow me on the Twitter feed, which is Matt McNeil AM 950. But what we do is we have this kind of event where it basically is tried and true through and through, blue and blue. It's all Democrats. We bring in Democratic politicians. We've had Al Frank in there. We've had Amy Klobuchar came one year. Mark Dayton, the governor of Minnesota, has been there. We've had numerous hosts of ours over the years. Ed Schultz has been there, and Mike Malloy, John Fugelsang have come on in and been keynote speakers. This year we had a pretty darn a pretty darn good lineup on paper. We had coming in. We were supposed to have Keith Ellison, Representative Minnesota 5. Who's actually my representative. I love Keith Ellison. Rick Nolan, who had a tremendous victory up in the Minnesota 8th District in the U.S. House race up there. Rick Nolan won re-election over Stuart Mills III. Stuart Mills III was basically a Silver Spoon kid they shipped in from Wisconsin and just chucked a ton of money into that race, and Nolan won it. And that was really nice. We had those two guys lined up, but all of a sudden, early on Friday, now we did the Blue State Ball as Friday night, all of a sudden on Friday morning, I get a call saying we might end up having some problems because they still have not resolved the Department of Homeland Security funding issue. And obviously that was going through the House, and that had to be dealt with in the House. And so it was one of those things where we knew that this was what ended up happening was a possibility. We just didn't realize the possibility it was going to become. Indeed, we did not have Keith Ellison and Rick Nolan able to make it over and join us for the Blue State Ball. They were stuck in Washington, D.C. with Boehner and this whole, nightmarish, decisions that they had with the Department of Homeland Security. So I went from introducing those two, one of those guys plus another politician, to basically I just went with Rebecca Otto, who's the auditor for the state of Minnesota. She was kind enough to show up. She had actually a pretty tricky race. We also had Tom Hartman, the great Tom Hartman, big fanboy of his, smarter than me.
Likewise.
Yeah, he's just smarter than me 1,000 ways from Sunday. And I got to introduce him. But it's very entertaining when they say you're speaking in front of 400 people and you have to now to fill for a whole bunch of time. What really got nerve-wracking was the great Ken Martin. Ken Martin has led Minnesota with the DFL party. Ken Martin was kind enough when we lost our speakers to take 5 minutes. And without, we just kind of did this on the fly. Can you go speak? He took my exact topic of how bad Wisconsin is right now. I'm like, So I ended up, I was doing prop comedy. It was ugly. It was just an ugly situation, but we got through it. It was a lot of fun. Stephanie Miller was in town as well with her show. Just fantastic. We had a really good time. We had about 400 people show up. Paul Metza was playing music, and it was very enjoyable. It always is. It's just so much fun to have. And you know, it's nice to have something like that where you can have a democratic fundraiser, because frankly, or I don't want to say a fundraiser, we're not raising funds for anyone. It's a democratic event, I should say. But you know, there's a lot of Republican events, and there are not many Democratic events, and so we ended up having a really good time.
And that, I mean, we have Networks Nation, but they move around the country. The one thing I like about your Blue State Ball is you know where it's going to be at every year. You guys always have really good people there, and it really should become long term, like the CPAC for the sane CPAC. I'm not insulting you, I swear.
Well, no, I heard there's lots of sex at CPAC. I always looked at Newt Gingrich and said,
yeah, right?
Yeah, it's like, let me 50 Shades of Grey you, and I'll leave. But
there you go.
But but you just pointed it out. I mean, there's tons of these events, and at state levels, there are tons of Republican events like this that happen on a regular basis. And we don't really have too many Democratic events like this. And part of the reason why is frankly the lack of Democratic media out there. That really is a big reason why. This is the reason why we still have it is in Minneapolis, St. Paul, we still have a strong left-leaning talk station. And it's not something you have in a lot of markets. And without that basis and that envelope, it ends up becoming an issue.
Yeah, no, and that's why one of the things is it was actually Stephanie Miller that got me listening to you guys originally, because she was one of the first times I ever listened. She was promoting the Blue State Ball, and I was like, this is back in Vegas, and I was like, oh, I'd love to go to that thing. I have no money, but I'd love to go to that thing. And it was nice to see, in the midst of all the Air America going the way it went and everything, you guys just went on and went from there, because my only alternative was a Denver station that went to back right-wing Clear Channel nonsense.
Yeah.
So it was like you and them, and you're right. There's not a lot of stations. There's not a lot of coverage, and it looks like even MSNBC is going back to right-wing again. Because that worked out so well the first time they did it, Michael Savage. I like to remind people, especially liberals, that they cringe when I do that. It's like, yeah, they had Michael Savage on, and the only reason that he got tossed off is because he told somebody who was gay that he hoped they got HIV and died, and that's the only reason they tossed him off the air. Otherwise, they were going to keep him for the season.
Well, and then you look at the other side of that with MSNBC, Donahue getting checked off the air because he was the only one being honest about the Iraq War. And you all you have to, that's all you have to do is that it's, you net neutrality. I got to tell you, when that ruling came on down, and the ruling was for net neutrality to stay in place. I mean, basically the two options were internet the way it is for us right now, net neutrality, or a cable tiered system like you have at your cable television at home, where you have a basic internet lineup where you'll get Fox News and Fox Sports and Fox Business, and then the more you pay, the more access you get, and that eventually they wanted to get to a gold-plated status to where for $500 a month you could have the same internet access you have right now. Well,
oh my God.
Yeah, that was what you were fighting for. That's why net neutrality. I mean, John Oliver said it much better than I have.
He wholeheartedly did. I totally agree.
And so but I mean, that was the argument. I mean, do you want the internet to be like your cable television, or do you want it to be as it is right now? Well, net neutrality won, still on a 3-2 vote, mind you. And by the way, John Oliver has a lot to do with that 3-2 vote going the way it did. But I think there's a reaffirmation right now you're seeing by right-wing media puppet masters, I guess you'd say, to maintain control of what they do have, namely the television and radio and newspapers, and really try to make sure that the rights message is hammered home as much as possible across the nation. That's I still, for the life of me, from the business side of things, I can't understand why anyone would flip a left-leaning talk station, which is the only left-leaning talk station you have in town, and put the fifth or fourth, right-wing talk station, or the fourth or fifth sports talk station on in a market, because you won't make any money. You will lose money, but they would rather lose money than they would have left-leaning talk, which can make money. My station is an example of that. So, it's disheartening, as you brought up MSNBC, but at the same time, the reason why we were able to shake off the stink of W in 2006, 2008 was because of the internet finally coming to fruition of the information source that it had become.
Yeah, no, and that's why they want to change it, because they want to close like the Young Turks down, like FYI Nation now, which we're building down, and make it harder to get to these sites. And that's like what they're doing with politics. They're making it harder, and that's the other thing that I want to touch with, because they're basically almost one and the same. It's pay for play. And it really disgusts me. And I know you and you've been concerned about the Article 5 thing. I know you're concerned and about the convention and everything. First, let me alleviate one of your concerns. The whole myth behind it being a runaway convention was brought to you by the John Birch Society. They made that up.
Well, first, what you're bringing up, though, I think is one of the things that is part of the problem with bringing this to fruition is there is either a lack of intelligence, a lack of solid information, or an outright misinformation campaign going on about this that's out there. I mean, what you're talking about is bringing in basically a Continental Congress mentality to bring in a new amendment to get money out of politics.
Now, I hear you, and we've sparred on air. Well, I tweeted and you sparred on air, which I thought was awesome that morning. I was typing away while you're.
I've had very good people say they're amazed by my ability to hold multiple conversations at once. But I do pay attention to when I have guests on the air. So.
I cannot do that. That's why I have Nickie, because my hamster goes down and it's just like, oh, you can getting back up. But here's one of the things with it, one of the facts that we have. These are facts from the actual legislature of Utah. I found them in Utah, right? Utah is not exactly a blue state.
The Beehive State, yes.
So this is one of the 10 facts. 38 states must ratify any proposal from amendments in the convention, requiring a broad concession that makes sure amendments in the convention cannot run away, John McCain air quotes. The limited scope of an amendments convention is underscored by the fact that it specifically says amendments cannot alter the equal number of votes for each state in the U.S. Senate without the consent of the affected state. This establishes that an Article 5 convention could not simply rewrite the Constitution. So it's really amendment specific. And here's the kicker. The 17th Amendment that was going to be ratified, it's the closest we've ever gotten, right, in recent history. As soon as Congress saw that the 17th Amendment was that close, they shut it down and they passed it themselves.
Well, and what I think you're getting at, though, here's what I'll say. You're right. There's a ratification process which has to go back to the state.
Wait, what was that? What was that?
Well, no, you're right on this, but I don't know if you've been paying attention to the playbook out there. The right controls a lot of these states right now, and when you're coming down to a state like Pennsylvania or Wisconsin or in Illinois, where they've gone red, they've gone blue. And there's going to be, we already know. Let's label them. We won't name them all off. Alabama, Idaho, Alaska, Utah, Arizona. They're all going to approve this sucker. So you're going to get down to, the 20 or so true Democratic states. You're talking about 38. They just need to get 8 more of them. Nevada would be a prime target. New Mexico, Colorado would be a prime target for them. Pennsylvania, Illinois, Ohio, Wisconsin, those would all be prime targets for them. They'd completely ignore Massachusetts, Minnesota. They'd ignore California. They wouldn't even try there. And that's my problem, is that I understand what you're saying, but what is sent to the states is what concerns me. Yeah. And it's really easy. This is why not only is 2016 extremely important. You and I talked the last time you guys had me on the show. 2020 is the most important election. It's going to happen in my entire lifetime for this one reason. It's redistricting. It's the redistricting of these states, these House seats, which are an abomination to gerrymandering. That is what is, in my mind, the most important aspect. Before we're going to get to that level, that Article 5 stuff, we're going to have that election come on up. And if we can get control of these states and these state legislatures and put it in place to where we can redraw these districts where they're at just fair, not being like the Republicans, where they basically try to create, Republican safe districts and spread the Democrats as thin as possible across the rest of the districts. I mean, look at Austin, Texas. I mean, that's just one of the most disgusting ones you'll ever see. Yeah. But it's beyond that. It's if you can get to the point where you can start really turning this country around, that is what is going to be the key. That's why if from everyone I've talked to on a national level, if you talk to these PACs, there is a war chest already being built for 2020. That election could be trillions of dollars spent to basically hold not only on presidential races, not only on Senate and House races, but on state races. They'll be shoveling money into those state races to try to hold as many of those seats as possible, because that's what's allowed them. These state houses and the state senates have what have been allowing the Republicans to contain and control as much of the message as possible.
And you're exactly right there, Matt. And I'll give you the right, and I'll say it one more time. You're exactly right on that. But I think we could do both at the same time. I don't see any harm in doing both at this point. But I agree with you. We do need the state legislatures being on board. But I would at least hope that the state, like if we get a Republican legislature who really does not like this, who does not like being beholden to the oligarchs. I gotta believe, and this is where I talked to you about it before we got on air about my crisis of conscience. I'm one of these guys who really likes to deal one-on-one with a person, as opposed to not putting words in somebody's mouth, or I don't even like doing it for national figures, like Republicans. But I'm getting to the point where it's kind of like what they say that the Muslim community has to do. I don't see any Republicans standing up for the LGBTQ community. I don't see any Republicans standing up for unions. I see them calling them terrorists.
Well, actually, let me interject there. Let's talk with you. I was just talking to a friend of mine at the Blue State Ball about the log cabin Republicans. I mean, what political party has a group which, let's face it, the Republicans need to find a way to appeal to Latinos, to the African-American community, to women, to the gay community. You have the log cabin Republicans, the Republicans who are for gay rights, for gay issues, but still believe in whatever Republican dream they still think exists. They go there hat in hand. We want to be part of the party. And the mentality of the party is sit down, shut up. We'll tell you if we need you for a photo op.
Well, that's exactly it.
And that in my mind, why? Because
why do you stay then?
Well, I'm not.
I mean, why why would a log cabin Republican want to even be there, knowing that they're not, their voice means nothing?
They're still carryovers from that party, that Republican Party that existed up until 1992. I mean, that's what I mean. They still have harkened back to an age when the parties were not, the Republican Party wasn't taken over by the Cheney H.W. Bush regime and driven into such a lather that they have been in, that spawned the Tea Party and spawned this no compromise whatsoever. Look what happened with the Department of Homeland Security vote. They gave them 1 week. I mean, the same people who talk about keeping America safe were willing to allow there not to be the Homeland Security to not be funded because they can't stand the Democrats getting anything done their way through an elective system. That's what it is. And so what you're looking at is you're looking at Republicans that are still thinking that they have the ability to be part of the group, part of the discussion. And no, they're not. And outside of a handful of women and a handful of minorities that are part of the Republican Party that serve the purpose of the predominantly white male Republican Party to be able to point to them and say, see, we're diverse. The reality is they only care about, white male agenda, and they're so belligerent about it that you can have people who are gay or are Black or are Latino who say, I'm a proud Republican, and they can say, sit down, shut up, we'll tell you when we need you for a photo op.
Yeah, and that's what I was trying to get across on my show on Friday before CPAC happened, because the Lincoln Log Cabin Republicans, as I like to call them, because had I come out and still been a Republican, I would have wanted, we had this whole discussion on Friday about me being a Republican while I was rich in my family, because my family had money and my family's all Republican. And I said, yeah, I would have thought that I would have been the one to charge in. And by the way, thank you for your service. Like, you've been in the military. I would have been that guy. I would have been so convinced that I could be that guy to charge in and change the Republican, party and like really do it from within. But eventually I would have been smart enough to realize that the only way you could get there from here is to get money out of politics. So then, the oligarchs and all those people pushing that agenda couldn't pay for the agenda anymore. And I think that's where we need to go. Do you want to take some, Nickie, I'm sure has some AskSomeSay questions. Do you want to take some from the audience?
I'd be more than happy to.
Okay. Nickie, would you like to read some AskSomeSay questions for Matt? And you're listening to... Sure, go ahead.
No, you go.
Okay. Oh, you're listening to Some Say with Tom and Nickie. We're a little discombobulated. We haven't done a Sunday show in a while, so we're a little discombobulated. But our normal show is from 3 to 6, Monday through Friday. Sometimes we get a little sweary, no FCC, that Matt has to contend with. Well, okay. Think Stephanie Miller's Happy Hour podcast on some days.
Sometimes it gets pretty downright bad. But...
Yes, but today we're being good.
Yes.
That's effing awesome.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. And I'm not even going to chastise you for not going the full Monty.
But I do got a question for him.
But if you have a go for AskSomeSay, and that's how Nickie will read your tweets. She's my co-host in EP, and I do all the yelling. And she, tasers me. Literally, she has a taser to do that. Watch out, Matt. She's not afraid to use it.
Anyway, Jackie Craig asks, hey, Matt McNeil, what's up with the nasty trend in education and all the hating on teachers? And then she adds on, Republicans and dinos are looking for votes using ED reform, I suppose education reform, language choice. Vouchers are actually resegregating our schools.
And by the way, I ran into Jackie over the Blue State Ball. It was great to see you. Absolutely. She looked fantastic. The teachers, I mean, it's very interesting. One of the big wars we're having here in Minnesota, the Republicans don't quite know what to do with themselves in Minnesota because we now have a $1.9 billion budget surplus. We have, we've run the state so damn well. We have low unemployment. We have wages are skyrocketing. We have this massive budget deficit. We're actually taking care of things. And lo and behold, it was at the hands of the Democrats. So Republicans are trying to create problems. And one of the things that thanks, Obama. Gas is so cheap. Oh, thanks, Obama. But we right now have the Republicans trying to go after the seniority as a consideration as part of tenure. And they're sort of saying, and they're putting out all the bizarre talking points that they always put out about bad teachers, like a Canadian girlfriend, that sort of thing, where they create this creature that doesn't really exist to then justify their legislation. Voter ID is another great example. Oh, this massive problem of fraudulent voting. Well, there isn't a massive problem. Don't say that. There is. And here's the solution for the problem that doesn't exist. Well, they hate teachers because, well, frankly, because it's the teachers union. And I think to a point within the real old elements of the Republican Party that, harken back to the people like J.P. Morgan and the Prescott Bush and the Koch parents and stuff like that, who really believe in overthrowing the government and getting us back to a good old 1880s businesses rule overall mentality. They some of them hate the idea of public school, period, but mainly it's trying to get rid of some of the last bastions of strong labor voices in this country. And they've done this game plan over and over again. They've gone into a community. They'll go out there and start with, seniority, and then they'll start doing a standardized test, which doesn't educate the kid or evaluate the teacher, just punishes teachers. Then they start firing teachers en masse. They make the union, they get rid of collective bargaining like they did in Wisconsin. Now they outright, they basically don't, make it illegal for unions to collect dues like they're going to do in Wisconsin with right to work. Then they start throwing out vouchers and they create a mess, and they basically neuter the teachers union. And that's what this is the first step in doing. They can't stand any union. They want them all destroyed. And so that's why they're going after the teachers here in Minnesota. They're trying to create a problem that does not exist. And they actually have, and to the shame of some Democrats here, they have a few Democrats who are on board with this, which is just disgusting. But in the reality is that if we are fools and don't cherish our teachers and give school districts the budgets they need and stop cutting their budgets, well, we're only asking for a less educated populace.
You're listening to Some Say with Matt McNeil. Or with Matt McNeil. Some Say with Tom and Nickie with guest Matt McNeil. See, I warned you ahead of time. I don't do a Sunday show regular anymore, and we do interviews on Sunday, and but I'm really happy to have you here today, because Sundays gives us a long-form interview, and you're very appreciative with your time, Matt. And I have Nickie with me, who's doing Ask Some Say tweets, and what I want to talk to you about now is language and how we can change the language of what we do and deal with Republicans. The Frank Luntz style type of wording that might work and might resonate better. Like, instead of entitlements, social security net, or social safety net, rather, and stuff of that nature. Do you think that's a better way to go to, kind of fight fire with fire? And it goes to my other question of broad brushing these GOP, because even on the state level, they seem to be the same. Should I just broad brush when I talk about them at this point, or should I still try to, because I was reached, Cenk Uygur was reached and changed, but at this point, I feel like there are so many out there that you're just not going to change because they're drinking the Fox Noise Kool-Aid, that it's just so not going to happen. And what do you think, Matt?
First of all, I think that the vast majority of the Republican Party trying to talk to them about politics is like going to the howler monkey exhibit at your local zoo and trying to explain the benefits of the ACA to the howler monkeys. These people do not care. They will not listen. You can go on out and give them detailed links, detailed reports. You can give them anything you like. You can hone your message down to a bumper sticker slogan. You can give them the science, the numbers that prove your point, and they just do not care. They don't want, the whole concept of Fox News is not news. It's to validate people's opinion. And when that's your whole goal, they don't want news. They don't want facts. They don't want calm discussion. They don't want rational response. What they want is they want their dystopian, small-minded, ignorant thought processes validated. And that's that. That is who these people are. And it's unfortunate. It really is unfortunate, but that's who these people are. I made this point this last week on the show that you could come home to find your spouse sleeping with your favorite Republican politician. If you're a Republican voter, you come home, you find your wife, you find your husband, you find your girlfriend, your boyfriend doing the horizontal bop with your favorite Republican politician, and the first thing they'll do is blame a Democrat. That is where these people are at. So trying to have a discussion with them is pointless. What you really need to do is, you and I talked about John Oliver. One of the main reasons net neutrality exists is because John Oliver single-handedly made standing up for net neutrality cool. And what happened? They were flooded over at the FCC with constant barrages of information about this. The people who are far more concerned about the Real Housewives of whatever godforsaken city, or the James Bond movie marathon, or watching the Kardashians, all of a sudden stopped and paid attention. That is the group. Forget about those zealots on the far right. They're gone. They're the lost cause. They're the Whigs. They're history. You have to focus on the people who are far more concerned at looking at their glowing rectangular screen than the Republicans. So forget about trying to convert the Republicans. It's getting the massive amount of people who sat out this last election, who sit out all these elections, get them excited, get them fired up, and getting them out to vote. And it comes down to making politics cool. I don't know how you do that. I'm not a cool person, but, I don't know how you do that. But, it's like one of the things we did this week with Wisconsin. Wisconsin, right across the border in the Minneapolis-St. Paul metro area, is going to pass right to work. Right to work states get paid on average $1,500 less. What you're basically saying is, since, in Wisconsin, even though you don't have to join a union, even though that you don't have to be part of a union, even though that is not something that is on your horizon or part of your mandate, you would rather pay $1,500 out of your own paycheck, union and non-union alike, to just make sure unions can't exist. That's a vacation every year. That is your kid's college. That is everything. And yet that's where these people are. If you can't look at them, and the Republicans you'll look at them. I've tried this week, looking at a Republican and saying, you really want to give up $1,500, and you put that money out there, you can see the cogs in their mind trying to turn, trying to say, sweet Jesus, that's stupid. Why would I do that?
Exactly. That's what I'm thinking. I mean, that's the same as paying union dues. Duh.
They've so convinced themselves of the problem that you can't negotiate with them. You have to make stuff cool again. You have to make being involved in politics cool. I'm never one of these people to go on out there and say we should have mandatory voting, because I think that's part of America too, is the right to vote.
No, I agree.
You shouldn't force people to vote, but at the same time, we've seen it proven that you can make politics fun, exciting, invigorated again by getting people active. That's what you have to do. You have to reignite the people that generally will vote Democrat, but who are generally either too bored to vote, too preoccupied to vote, or basically consumed by the massive amount of money to tell them not to vote. That's the group that you need to get active again.
And and thank you for that, because now I don't feel so bad. I'll throw them under the bus. I will have that. What's that?
I didn't mean that.
No, I know. But, no, because I've been being one. I know it. It's like, I know how they think, and they all think like Ronald Reagan, and these little soundbite pictures that are easy to swallow as a jelly bean, and they won't break out of it, because it's like what you said. If they start to thinking about it, it's like to use a Star Trek analogy in memory of Leonard Nimoy. It's like the computer in the brain that does not compute, and then the computer brain explodes because they've overrid themselves with stupid because of all the talking points, and they can't function beyond that. And you're absolutely right, Matt. And I'm talking with Matt McNeil with Some Say with Tom and Nickie, Some Say Sunday. We do interviews and sometimes special shows, and this is an interview and a special show. Matt has been willing to be in the hot seat with us again. Matt, when you have a story from the Blue State Ball for us about dealing with a conservative talker. Could you tell us about that?
No, I don't know about dealing with a conservative talker. As I was getting ready to leave, I had one of the listeners who, if you listen to AM 950 in Minneapolis, St. Paul, you would know Mark and Fridley.
Yes.
And Mark and Fridley comes on over and says, well, do you know who that guy is talking next to Ian Levitt? Ian Levitt hosts the Daily Report, the afternoon show. I do the morning show on the Morning Grind. He does the afternoon show, the Daily Report. And I said, no. And so, well, that's the guy who does the local conservative morning show over there. And I was shocked that, first of all, I was shocked, like, seriously, you haven't seen 50 Shades of Grey? This is your option? I don't expect you to have a good time if you're a conservative at the Blue State Ball. In the same sense as I understand why billionaires vote for the Republicans. This is not really a mystery. I don't understand why you keep working if you're a billionaire, but still, it's fair to say, okay, I get you. But, he came on out and, he initially sort of said, I wanted to see what the enemy's up to. But, we ended up having a nice little discussion, just, and he said, he asked me a question like, had you ever, were you always a Democrat? And I said, no. I've shared the story. I don't know if I shared it with you. You guys, back in 1992, I walked into the voting booth. I didn't know who I was going to vote for, Ross Perot, Bill Clinton, or George H.W. Bush. I really didn't know. For me, it was sending the troops. I'm a veteran. I'm a disabled veteran too, but I'm a veteran, and you do not send the soldiers in. The soldiers are brilliant. The U.S. Army and military are brilliant. You tell them to jump, they say how high. The only thing that they need in return is that you do not send them into combat under false pretenses, and that is exactly what George W. Bush did. That's when I lost it. That's when I said, enough's enough. 5,000 dead American soldiers, 30,000 permanently injured soldiers, trillions of dollars lost on a made-up war. That was it for me. I will never vote Republican again. That all being said, I explained this to him. I do still have some things that I don't know if you consider them conservative issues or not, but I think they're just who I am. I have a lot more progressive issues, though, that's for sure. And the guy seemed nice. We talked about possibly doing a fundraiser and such. And it was just an interesting interaction. I could tell he was extremely uneasy. I mean, his jaw was clenched a lot. That being said, he seemed nice enough. The next day, though, I did have some individual try to access me via social media sites on my private ones, tried to friend me, who seemed to be from this extreme right-wing side of, when I started doing some research on them, online, they seem to be extreme far right-wing people, and I'm like, okay, where did this come from? I don't know if there's a connection necessarily, but I will say that it did raise an eyebrow. I mean, doing what I do for a living.
There's a little stink coming that way, right?
There's a little bit of this. Is this a James O'Keefe sort of thing going on? And I'm very. I'm trust me right now. I'm going through other friends I have on social media and checking to make sure that they're all who they say they are. But no, that stuff happens, and so I don't know if there's a relation to it, but no, I did run into him, and he seemed uncomfortable there, but he seemed cordial enough when I talked to him.
Well, see that goes kind of back where my crisis of conscience went. I'm talking with Matt McNeil on Some Say with Tom and Nickie, Sundays at 6. Usually we do special shows or interviews, and like I said, this is a special show and an interview with Matt McNeil of AM 950 Radio. What pisses me off and really makes me want to drop F-bombs with the Republicans and conservatives is what they do after they've sent the military into a war under false pretenses. They wrap themselves around the military and the flag, and they tell us how much they love the troops. Mm-hmm. And how unpatriotic the Democratic Party is because we voted against the war. To me...
Well, do you want to hear... Let me give you
go ahead.
A story on this. So in 2004, my oldest daughter was born. She was born in September, and at that point, I had a Carrie Edwards for Veterans for Carrie Edwards bumper sticker on my car. And I went over. She was born over at Fairview Southdale in Minneapolis here, just outside of one of the suburbs. And I remember going over and parking my car in the parking ramp and going up and visiting, bringing my son at that point up to visit. And I was coming back to the car, and this woman, I swear to God, accosted me in the parking lot. She goes, "You hate the troops." And I said, "Pardon me?" You hate the troops. And she pointed at my bumper sticker. And this is back in the fervor when W was having anyone who seemed to even slightly look like they weren't voting Republican tossed out of town hall meetings.
Yep.
I said,
yeah.
Hate the troops. Look at the bumper sticker, you idiot. I am a troop. Okay, so it's like, but there was that disconnect that this woman had. And I mean, how you go on out and verbally confront someone in a hospital parking lot, but then are so narrow-minded on it that just to make your point that you hate the troops, the fact that you are voting Democrat, you hate the troops. That is the epitome for me of what is wrong with the Republican Party. And by the way, the conservative guy I did talk to on Friday night, he said the same thing when I talked about the Iraq war. He says, off the record, you will get a lot of Republicans who will say the same thing, that Iraq war is very hard for them to understand. But they won't ever say that publicly. But that's in the military. A lot of military people, a lot of veterans from the last 15 years, all look at what happened with Iraq and like, what were you doing? The military themselves has swung to the left. There's a lot more people that vote Democrat in the U.S. Army now, in the military now, than used to. Don't get me wrong. Still a lot of fervent Republicans in there. Still a lot of pro-Second Amendment guys in there. But there's a lot more Democrats in the Army now because what is the military's mentality? Well, at least they're not sending me into wars under false pretenses. And so it's that mentality that they will use the military as a prop when it's convenient for them, but when confronted with something which goes against the narrative that they want to believe, they will vilify it any way they can possibly do it.
Okay, and we have, Nickie, we do have another Ask Some Say question, which you can do on the Twitter machine right now because we're live for Matt, and Matt's generously given us some of his time today on a Sunday, and I know you got kids and family, and you dealt with the Blue State Ball, so I really do appreciate this.
My pleasure. No, it's my pleasure to be here. I really do enjoy being on with you, and thank you very much for the invite once again.
No, and it's mine because I gotta admit I'm a little bit of a fanboy. You get my tweets every morning. And I have Nickie with some tweet questions for Ask Some Say if you could, Nickie.
Sure. Jimmy Bear asks, "Hi Matt McNeil, do you believe that GOP are climate deniers or are they just sticking to the Koch brothers script?"
No, okay. Boy, that's a good question. Thanks, Jimmy Bear. I appreciate it. First of all, I think that there are, let's just call it what it is. There is a corporate mentality that does it in the same, like we've lived through the cigarette nightmare where the cigarette companies used to say, hey, they're healthy. And then the whole thing, the movie The Insider talked about where the truth finally came on out and we realized, these guys have been lying to us forever. The same thing is going on right now with the coal and gas industry. They know it. They're just trying to make as much money as possible on it. What they've done magnificently is tap into that belligerence factor of the Republicans we've talked about, and that through buying off politicians like Sarah Palin and Steve King and Louis Gohmert, by then getting with them their fervent supporters that that are so wanting to believe the narrative, and all you have to do is saying, climate change is a myth. Yeah, climate change is a myth. They won't even question it. And that's why Republicans love it when Fox News sends someone out in winter to see piles of snow. That's all you need to know about the Republicans. That's who they are. I mean, James Inhofe coming onto the Senate floor with a snowball and saying, see, there's a snowball. That means there's no climate change. I so want to go on the Senate floor with an Oklahoma rump roast and see, they're all asses in Oklahoma. See, I got one right here. See, that's all it's science.
No, you're
that's who they are. I mean,
I'm glad you brought him up because that was my follow-up question. Because when he did that and I saw that article, I was like, I'm sorry, Matt, but are you fucking kidding me? I have to drop the F-bomb on that one because it's a worthy target. And what I would have done is pelted him back with a snowball if I was that. And here are multiple, and this is climate change as the best example. One does not equal global warming, but multiple coming at near springtime when it should be. Well,
they don't want to look, but they don't want to look at that aspect of it. They don't want to say, yeah, obnoxious amount of snow we're having in New England. That's not normal. or the fact that we're not really having snow. And we had a November that was like January in Minnesota. We had a November like January, a December like March, a January that was kind of didn't know what it wanted to be, like late February. And, you know, it's been a pretty traditional February. I don't know if you've seen National Geographic. National Geographic, I think, has finally just said the hell with you guys. And they put out their latest edition is basically science does exist. Science is real. Science says these things are happening. Shut the F up. And that is kind of, that's National Geographic.
Right.
But I think that they're finally at their limit. I think that they finally have had when an absolute complete brain dead moron like James Inhofe walks onto the Senate floor with a snowball and says, see, climate change is not happening. You know, either that or you're a 3-year-old that just spilled their snow cone, you moron. But when you have that happen, they're finally saying, no, we used to take the merits of science and apply them to our politics. Now we debate whether science is real before we even get to the political aspect of it. That is a big change. And that's why, you know, when you get frustrated, and I understand why people get frustrated. When you get frustrated, it's because of this level of moronity that just refuses to look at reality. When you look at climate change, one of the most basic scientific facts is observation, checking the temperature every day. And now you have, who is the former press secretary? Perino is on Fox News. Dana Perino is on Fox News talking about just making it up. Oh, they've made up the temperatures. No, these are people that this is all they do, that they go out and they read the temperatures and they write them down. And because that is so, they can't deny that anymore. That base science contradicts everything they say. They've just come up with the narrative. Oh, they just make up the numbers. Like that validates. But you see, once again, it goes back to the narrative issue. It goes completely back to the narrative issue.
And back to the narrative and the numbers. Since we're on this, Matt, I want to ask you, if you saw the story out of Florida, our own Jeff Waldorf, who you got to talk to last time, couldn't be here today, but he does a show on our network called Around the Nation, and he brought out the numbers from the Florida Republican plan that they did. And I don't know if you saw this, but 49 people signed up for the plan. And then I think at least 2 or 3, maybe a little bit more, dropped after they saw how bad the Republican plan was. It was basically vouchers and this gift card type thing for prescriptions, you know, that you could get for free before Obamacare or the Affordable Care Act, as it's properly called. And playing to that narrative, does it burn your britches the way it does mine, that there aren't more people, even on the so-called liberal networks, talking stuff up like that, where we have solid numbers of Florida, and that's not out there more with their crappiest plan that they could come up to?
Oh, well, it bugs me, but it's not like I don't understand it. I mean, my God, you get to some parts of this country, and the reason why there's a war on national public radio is because in backwoods Ozark, Arkansas, or out in the middle of Arizona or in Idaho, that is quite literally the only non-Republican controlled media out there. And so even if it's a classical station that just at the top of the hour plays a 3-minute news, it's 3 minutes of news that's not been filtered through a Republican, a machine. And so hence they want that shut down. Does it bother me that stuff doesn't get out there? Yeah, but it's because it's not like it's out there and really relevant, or I shouldn't say relevant, easy to access for most people. Most people have to go look for it. Yeah. I mean, like the two states who've had the best return rates on Obamacare, Arkansas, Kentucky, Republican states that went and put in this program, and they've had tremendous numbers. The gas prices. Remember, gas was going to the amount of time Republican media spent on $10 gallon gas when Mitt Romney was running, because that's where we're at. I filled up my tank; it was $1.47 per gallon. You don't hear anything about that because why? The narrative that doesn't go with the narrative the Republicans want to be putting out there, and frankly, the Republican voters don't want to hear that. All they want to hear is Obama bad. This morning, I was at church. I know smart money was against that one, but I was at my church, and I'm Catholic, and they talked about, is this the image of God? And I'm not, once again, I'll put my disclaimer I put on the air when I talk about religious stuff. You do or don't do whatever you do or don't want to do. I'm Catholic. I'm just relaying the story to give you some precedent. When he put up pictures on the wall, is this the face of God? And he showed children, he showed smiling people, showed some people that looked more concerned, more distressed. And then he put up a picture of Obama. Is this the picture of God? And his point was so well done. He's like, the point is that everyone, if you're Catholic, if you're religious, if you're Christian, everyone is the image of God. And he says at the end, do not tell me this man does not have faith. This man has as much faith as any one of us. And you could tell, I go to church. It's a liberal Catholic church, mind you. But I go to church in a relatively wealthy community called Eden Prairie. And you could see a few people who are like, didn't want to hear that, but that's the kind of thing that has to happen. You have to kind of kick in that door. You have to make people realize that this narrative of him being this Kenyan Muslim Nazi Marxist, Satanist is just not true. And that if you are truly one of these religious people, that he's the image of God like anyone else is, and he has as much faith as anyone else. And so you vilifying him just because you can vilify him really is not a good Christian thing to do. But once again, whether that sticks or not remains to be seen, because with at least that group there, if there were any Republicans in that crowd, that's not the narrative they want to believe.
Amen. And I'm a former Catholic. I go home and then I'm a Catholic again. So I understand. But my mom actually, and I mainly do it for my mom to keep the peace and everything else. I know probably not the best way to be a Catholic, but I don't mind the church that my mom goes to in New Haven, Connecticut, because it's a lot like the one you described. And it's actually an African-American black church. So it's very weird because my mother is very white. But it's really nice to see because they have the best mass, and it's totally different from the Catholic Church that I grew up in. The all white, all boring, all feeling like you're going to die in the next 5 minutes, where their mass is like just lifting you up. And what I was always taught, at least with the words, what going to church and going to mass was supposed to be about. Not making you feel like by the time you got out that you were so happy to get out of there that you wanted to run screaming from the church, but happy to be there. You know what I mean?
Well, no, we had that show up a lot when we had in 2012. We had the ballot initiative to try to make a gay marriage illegal in the state of Minnesota. It failed. First state to where it failed. And one of the big sources of thorn in the Republican side was the churches, particularly of Minneapolis, St. Paul, who went against the doctrine, whether that was Catholic, Methodist, Lutheran, no matter what the denomination. Most of the churches in the Twin Cities we're not going to turn our pulpits into a pulpit of hatred. That is just not what we do here. And, in quiet, reserved Minnesota, we're not going to all of a sudden become fire and brimstone and talk about how the fact that if you acknowledge the fact that your friend, your cousin, your child, the person that works for you is gay and accept it, that you're an evil person. That didn't fly, and that's one of the reasons why it ended here. I just think that it's got to be one of those things where, when you talk about changing perspective, it's got to be something more than just, hey, we're going to put out a strong memo. Hey, we're going to try to buy one newspaper in one town. It's got to be much more coordinated and much more fervent. And that's the key. Is I think when you look at 2016, when you look at 2018, when you look at 2020, it's how many people are you going to take to the polls? And don't give me that bull crap about, I'll take 10 people and you never call someone. Get off your damn ass and go get some people to the damn polls, because that is what's going to get things changed. And if you and enough with the lip service, enough with this, we'll hope we'll do. Well, maybe I'll make some calls. I don't want to really upset my neighbors. No, get them down there, because forget about the Republicans. It's that large mass of people that stay at home that you need to get there, and that's how you're going to make things change.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, and that's one of the things that we tried to stress here during the election was getting out and doing it, and because some people can't, and and I'm gonna ask one more question, and then I'll you've given me more than enough time, and I really appreciate a full hour, no commercial breaks. That's one of the things we do here. Most of our shows.
Tom, I am all over the place too. I'm like, and then I remember seeing Humphrey Bogart. You know, it's like that old washed-up actress telling you about her days when she had that Star Trek cameo.
I remember when gas was 99 cents. You know, but no, and here's...
Yeah, I do too.
God, we're old. You aged me, thanks. But here's the thing, going back to messaging and bringing out, is it a lot easier for us, like you've come on the show, I've called you before, but it is a lot easier to network, and even if you're a different progressive station, like we're trying to build a small little nook on the internet, and you guys have your huge nook in a big pond, is it nicer to just build together than try and, you know, compete? I mean, I know we are competing in a little bit.
We're not competing with each other. I don't consider myself competing with you guys. Not in the same sense as I don't think you're good. I don't think you're successful. I mean, I come from the world of radio. I think radio works as an advertising medium. I don't care what the format is, country, pop rock, whatever. I think radio works. So I'm part of that conglomerate. As far as the liberal talk goes, here is the scariest thing I can say. I decided about 3 weeks ago to sit down and try to do exactly kind of what you alluded to. Get a few of these left-leaning talk stations that still exist on the air, and getting some of their local talent on with me. I'll go do some stuff with them, kind of building up a liberal interview network, I guess, for lack of a better way to say it.
Okay.
I went around and I said, well, who else does morning radio in this country who does a local liberal talk show? You know, we have tons of local conservative talk, tons of local sports talk, tons of local religious talk. Let me try to track down the other local morning talk shows that are liberal or progressive. I am by far the largest one in the country, and I have no idea how the hell that happened. There's one out of North Carolina. There's one out of Massachusetts, out of Western Massachusetts, not Boston. There's one out of Maine, and there's one out of a neighborhood. I think it's a smaller town outside of Cleveland. And that was all I could find of local morning liberal talk. It's being run down. I mean, I think what you need to do is do what you're doing with your network here, with the AskSomeSay show here, and keep building these networks that you're building. Get them active, get them promoted. Social media does work on that. I can attest to that. Get out there, get your name out there, and just work. There is no rest. There is no break. This is not a 100-meter dash. This is a lifelong race. What we're in right now, and there are so few progressive voices out there anymore. We need to link together and be part of that. And considering how few are out there, I mean, it's nothing against. I love Stephanie Miller, and I love Tom Hartman, Mike Malloy, Norman Goldman. They're all a lot of great national liberal talk show hosts. But when you can get back into LA, back into San Francisco, back into Denver, back into New York City with local, live, liberal, progressive talk that can make money, and if I can do it in Minneapolis, St. Paul, these people can do it out in these other cities.
Yep.
When they can do that, when we can get a strong internet community that holds together, I believe the progressives have a far stronger internet, whether it's print or, some of the stuff that you find with like what you're doing here with podcasting and such and the live streaming. I think the Democrats have the upper leg on the internet, but we have to work together to get the message across. Oh,
and I got to say, my audience, as well as yours, outrageously loyal, even on the national stage through the internet. I mean, I can't. I get mad at myself because I got to go to sleep for my schedule to be able to make my 3 o'clock show at 8 o'clock because I'm going to miss your last hour. So I'm like, damn it, I gotta go to sleep. So I listen in the podcast end of it. And no, you're extraordinarily right. And that's why I'm glad we have alternative voices like Jeff on the network. We even have a computer show that my baby mama and ex-wife, as she hates being called, but it is true. I was married once. But you know, and she's coming on at 9 o'clock and gonna talk like gaming and stuff like that. And we're trying to do something different, but not really. Something that if we could own a local station that we do and do what you guys are doing.
They're out there. It just is, and you know, it's one of those things where you just have to work, and that's all I can say is that it's not easy. It's not easy being in Minneapolis, St. Paul, but you know, and yeah, there are Republican stations and conservative stations where people just walk up, write a check, say stay on the air, and you know that they'll put, you know, that's what's keeping them on the air. You have networks who clearly are subsidizing these stations because there's no way the fourth, you know, conservative talk station in a market is making money, so it's being subsidized by the owner. But I think the important thing is getting out there and just keep freaking fighting. If the station, Chad Larson owns AM 950 in Minneapolis, St. Paul. He says it's going to be staying up. I'm glad to be there. I'll be there as long as I can. But I'll be damn sure to let you know that the minute if that ever ended, I'll be finding something. I'll be finding something out there because this is the message that you have to get out there.
If God forbid it ever does, and we can raise the money to have you, I'm poaching you because you know I'd love to say that we got you either way. So you know you better stay up there, AM 950, because I'll be happy to poach you because you to me is what. Like, I'd love having Nickie help me, but there are times, I know I couldn't do 3 hours on my own, and I'm so grateful for Nickie and the callers that we do have.
Oh, stop buttering me up on the air.
But no, you and Tom Hartman, I go to you first, and then Tom Hartman for the smarts, to like, when I'm like having a crisis of conscience or stuff. No, but Matt, because you guys have been in it a lot longer than I have. This is what I always wanted to do, but never thought I could do. And I'm grateful for net neutrality staying, hopefully, as long as the lawsuit doesn't win with Comcast. But I'm grateful for this being how it is. And one final question about that. Should we, and I'll let you go. And if Nickie wants to ask anything after, if you don't mind.
Sure.
But with net neutrality, should municipalities right now, since we have title, I'm going to screw up the title, but where you can create your own broadband network, where they can, where the states aren't allow it, should they do that right now and get the infrastructure and be competition? So they, like, say if Flint wanted to, and build its own broadband network as quickly as possible and put the money in and then get the business from that with gigabit speeds.
I would say that's a definite necessity. What you have to do, you know, what you have to do is get out there and get them. I would also make wind power. I would also make solar power. Could be a local issue, which gives a lot of people fits. But, you know, if you had your local town basically putting solar panels on top of all the buildings and supplying their own power locally, well, guess what? You're going to be in a lot better position. That's one of the things. Get local. Local politics affects you far more importantly than presidential politics. It really does. Yes. Get local, get involved. Be part of your community government and start putting forward ideas like that. That's the important thing.
No, and thank you for coming on. Nickie, do you have a question or anything you want to ask, or an AskSomeSay that we may have missed for Matt before we let him go? And then we'll be back on. We're just doing the interview today, and then I actually have to reset our internet here. But then at 9 o'clock, Char's doing a live show, Geeks and Grown Up Gamers, for that. She's on every Sunday at 9, either a rebroadcast or a live show, and this will be her first live show, so hopefully that'll go well for her. But Matt, thank you again. And Nickie, do you want to...
Anything for me, Nickie?
No, I'm just wanted to say thank you for the picture, though. That was awesome.
If you want to go see the pictures of the Blue State Ball, I want to drive people to go to my Twitter feed, Matt McNeil AM 950, Matt McNeil AM 950. A lot of great photos from that night. A lot of great people there last night. I had a blast.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun hanging out. So by all means, go look at them. And then you're more than welcome to listen to me tomorrow morning, 6 to 8 a.m. in the morning grind in Minneapolis, St. Paul on AM 950.
And Matt, thank you again for doing this because you're my second. You came back.
Thank you.
I please let me come on back again in a few months. I'd love to come back again. Okay.
Awesome. And thank you for doing this. And it's been a real pleasure, Matt.
My pleasure. Thanks, guys.